Hello, everybody. My name is Maciej Blazik, and I'm the director of Summerhill Online Academy. Thank you to all of you who have punctually come to our CELPIP and CAEL orientation webinar. I have with me two fantastic guests and good friends of mine. We have Anna Baxter, which I know for quite some time now, and who is the expert in anything CELPIP and CAEL related. Hi, Anna.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chris, and just excited to start soon. It's great having us. So thanks for inviting us, Maciej. It's always a pleasure to work with you. So we're all excited to get started.
Thank you. And we also have Patrick. Patrick is also a presenter here, and he is specifically an expert in CELPIP, which is the more popular CELPIP versus CAEL. Although we're going to hear a little bit about CELPIP and CAEL, a little bit both, but we're going to mostly focus on CELPIP as this is one of the more in demand and products. And Patrick's going to tell us about it. Patrick, thank you for coming.
Thanks so much. As always, thanks for having us.
Thank you. So just would like to let everybody know that we did send a link for the registration. So if you did register, I do understand you kind of had to register again, but it's a little process that takes maybe 2 or 3 extra minutes. So we're expecting a few latecomers to be coming in the first third of the presentation. So we'll see how things go. So a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. This is a information webinar. So this is kind of an orientation, and I've during the registration process specifically, I asked for 2 separate registration processes so that I can ask some of the participants to share their questions. And we have a lot of specific questions to ask our expert panelists from Paragon Testing Enterprises. So hopefully we'll be able to answer some of the more specific questions that are not going to be answered by the first portion of the webinar. So we're going to have Mr. Patrick and Anna present some aspects about both of these tests. I would also like you to make everyone aware that there is a question section, even though there is no audio. There is a chat section. So if you at any moment during the presentation have a question for expert panelists, you can also enter that chat, put it into chat, and I will be compiling these questions as they come, so that I can ask them later to our lovely panelists. Okay, so in any case, we're going to hopefully learn about the difference between CELPIP and CAEL. The difference between CELPIP and IELTS in so many ways is these are 2 products which are very similar, and a lot of you guys have been asking about it. And hopefully we'll learn a little bit some tips and tricks. And guys, please hang on towards the end. There will also be a chance for you to get free CELPIP preparation materials made exclusively by Paragon Testing Enterprises. So we will be able to give you guys some of those materials at the end of our presentation. So I'm going to just hand it over to Mr. Patrick.
Thanks, Maciej, and hi everybody. Thanks for joining today. Hope you guys find the session useful, learning about both CELPIP and CAEL for different purposes, immigration, citizenship, or academic purposes. So yeah, feel free to post any questions, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. All right, so just gonna get started. I do apologize too. I have a bit of a cough, so just bear with me as I'm doing the presentation. Yeah, so we'll get started. So I'm going to talk about CELPIP right now. So, and we're hosted by Summerhill and Maciej Online Academy. So just thanks again for arranging this, setting this up, and should be a very valuable session today for the attendees. So
thank you so much, Patrick.
No worries, anytime. So yeah, regarding CELPIP, it is a general test taken for immigration or citizenship purposes in Canada. So this is just showing some of our international locations, some of the major countries and cities that we operate in. So this covers basically all of the countries that you can take CELPIP in. And on the bottom left-hand corner there, it's just showing some of the major cities in Canada and internationally where the test is offered. So you don't have to take it in Canada. You can take it in any of those cities and countries you know, that you're able to travel to or that you live in. So, all right, just going to cover the main features of the CELPIP test. So first and foremost, it is Canadian. The first C of CELPIP stands for Canadian. So it is a Canadian test. What that means is that the language, the conversations in the test is going to be Canadian or North American, so using Canadian accents or a North American accent. So, you know, which will be, applicable to a lot of you that are looking to, you know, live and build a future in Canada and stay in Canada. So it is using Canadian English. The second main component of the test is that it is fully computer delivered, meaning that the full 4 sections, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, are conducted by yourself on a computer at a test center. So it has to be taken at a test center, but it's all done by yourself at your computer workstation. Excuse me. Yeah, so it has a couple other features as well. You get the results very quickly. Just give me 1 second here. Just want to make sure that you're seeing the slides okay. Yeah, so basically, after you've taken your test, the results are available online in the free CELPIP account that you create in 4 to 5 days after your test. So it's actually 4 to 5 regular days, not business days. So you get the results pretty soon after you've completed the test. Also, due to the COVID situation, we realized that because what we typically do is we will mail you the physical copy of the score report, and that's the report that is accepted by the government when you're applying for permanent residency, citizenship. So we have an agreement now with the government of Canada that the reports can be uploaded online. So what that means is that when you first receive your score report online in your CELPIP account, that report can now be downloaded and submitted electronically. So you don't have to wait for the mail, the Canada Post delivery, and then send it back out yourself. It'll just kind of, it's a safer process, you know, to keep everybody involved safe during this pandemic situation. So, but yeah, it'll be more convenient for you guys. The last point there, we have a ton of free study products. We have a YouTube channel that has so many instructional videos on the full test as a whole, on specific components. So for example, if you're looking to improve your speaking result on a CELPIP test, we have videos that specifically focus on speaking or writing and so on and so forth. Yeah, so this is just showing we do have 2 types of CELPIP tests. So the main one is called CELPIP General. So it covers all 4 sections: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The total test time is 3 hours, but with CELPIP you are able to click through the test at your own pace. So you can end up finishing earlier than the 3 hours. You know, you won't have to wait until everybody's done the test. As soon as you're done, you can get up and leave the test center and enjoy the rest of your day. So the price of the CELPIP General test is $280 plus tax. So it's about, in Ontario, it's about $315 when you factor in the provincial tax. You know, it varies slightly depending on which country or province you're taking it in. But in general, it's around the $280, you know, just about $300. The second test below is called CELPIP General LS, L for listening, S for speaking. We have this test because when people are applying for citizenship, so they're already a permanent resident, the government of Canada only wants you to prove your listening and speaking skills. So in that case, we have a test where a test taker only takes listening and speaking. That way you don't have to worry about taking, you know, reading and writing if the government isn't going to consider it for your application. So the test, the LS test is only an hour, just over an hour and 10 minutes. And because you're only taking 2 components, the fee is lower. So you're looking at about $195 plus tax. So just over $200 Canadian. So that's convenient if you're taking it for citizenship, that you only take the 2 required sections. As I mentioned, as soon as you're done your test, 4 to 5 days after, you will receive the results electronically in the free CELPIP account that you create. So when you register for the test, you have to create a free account, a CELPIP account that you're going to sign in and out of. So once your results are posted, you'll be notified by email that they've been posted on our website in your account. And then you have to go to our website, celpip.ca, and sign in with your email and password. And then you'll be able to check and also download your scores to be submitted. This is going over the CELPIP scoring chart. So I don't know if many of you are familiar, but for government applications such as permanent residency, so covering express entry, provincial nominee programs, and citizenship, the government wants you to meet a Canadian language benchmark requirement for the 4 sections. So the government uses this scoring system, and it goes from 0 to 12 for each section. So for example, you have a level 7 in listening. 12 is like 100%. So that's basically perfect. Excuse me. So with the CELPIP test, we designed the scoring system exactly the same as the CLB levels the Government of Canada uses, just to make it very transparent, just to make it very clear. If you need a level, for example, 7 from the government, then that means you need to meet a level 7 in CELPIP. Another important thing to keep in mind is that there's no overall score with CELPIP. So you have to meet a minimum level across all 4 sections. So if your score requirement is a level 8, that means that you have to get at least an 8 in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So you wouldn't be able to get a 7 in a section. You'd have to get a minimum of 8 across all 4 sections or higher. But yeah, we follow the same benchmarks as the CLB system, just to make it easy for you guys to understand if you met your requirement for permanent residency citizenship. If you wanted to know what level you're required to meet, you would have to contact the Government of Canada directly. We provide you with the scores based on your performance, but we're not in charge of what your requirement is for your application. That would be determined by the Government of Canada, which is Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So you'd have to call them to find out, for my application, what level do I need to meet on an English test. Okay, just going to briefly cover the 4 components of the test. So the first component is listening. The way that the listening section works is you're going to be hearing different audio conversations in your computer headset. And then after you've heard the conversation, you're going to be carried to the next screen, and then you'll have to answer multiple choice questions based on what you heard. Each test taker will be provided with note paper right at the beginning when they come into the test center and they're seated at their workstation. So this will be a good time to make use of your note paper, because you're going to be hearing audio clips. And at the time that you're listening to the clip, you're not going to know what the questions are. So it's going to be very important that you take good notes, on anything that you think will be important that you might be asked in the questions. So once again, we provide note paper and a pen or pencil to every test taker as they're seated getting ready to take their test. So just to give you an idea, it's about 40 multiple choice questions in the listening section, but there's about 8 different clips that, or 6 different clips that you're listening to, in total 40 questions. This is just showing you basically how does the listening section look when you're taking the test. So that's how the computer screen will look when you're taking the real CELPIP test. The second section is reading. It is also multiple choice. So you will be scored basically on how many multiple choice questions you answer correct out of the total. The total is also about 40 questions for the entire reading section. So reading, the difference is that, you're going to get the reading passages and the questions at the same time on the same screen. So you can constantly, check the reading, check the questions, see, maybe before you read, if you want to read some of the questions, that way you know what you're being asked to identify, you can do that. But basically, you get the questions and the reading at the same time. So that might be a little bit more easier in this particular section. Just in general with the listening and the reading, the questions do get harder, and every question is not worth the same amount of points. So typically the harder questions will be worth more. So just to keep that in mind, but always manage your time as you're going through each series of questions because it is a time test. But the good thing about it being computer delivered is that you're always going to know how much time you have to complete each section. You won't have to ask a staff member how much time you have left to complete each section or the test itself. This is just showing you what the reading section looks like. So as I mentioned, you have the reading on the left and then you have the questions on the right. So it is, you basically click the blank boxes there, and then it's going to give you 4 answer choices for that particular question. Just make sure you scroll down once you're done the top questions. That way, you're answering all of the questions. Another thing I was going to say is that you're always going to have a blue next button, which allows you to go to the next question before the time runs out. So you can click that and you can end up finishing the test early, as I mentioned. Just make sure that when you click the next button, you can't go back and change your answers. So you can't go back in CELPIP. So just make sure if you are going to click next because you're finished a section, that you are happy with what you've submitted, and then you can carry to the next section. The third section is writing. So writing has only 2 questions, but you're given about 30 minutes each roughly to complete each question. So about an hour in total. The first question is writing an email. So you're going to be given a situation, and then you're going to be given instructions on what you need to include in the email. So once again, with the CELPIP test, the questions are going to be based on everyday life situations. So it's going to be, writing an email to apply for a job, or, writing an email because you weren't happy with the service that a restaurant provided you. So you're writing an email to the manager to let him know why you weren't happy with the service at the restaurant last night. So it's always going to be general everyday life topics that you're questioned on in the CELPIP test. So just make sure that you know how to format an email. One of the best parts about the writing section in CELPIP is that it functions very similarly to Microsoft Word. So what I mean by that is that on the real test, you're going to have access to cut, to copy, to paste, and most importantly, spell check. So if you misspell or misuse a word on the test in the writing section, it's going to underline it in red or green. And then you can right click on that word and it's going to give you suggestions. So it is an aid, a little bit of a help as you take the writing section. So cut, copy, paste, spell check, you will have access to all of that during the writing. Both writing questions, you have to frame your response within a word count range. So just make sure that you're not going under that range or you're not writing more than the maximum. So typically it's between 150 and 200 words per response. So just make sure you're staying within that range. Okay. Yeah. So the second question in the writing section, basically you choose a side. So it might be comparing, 2 different basketball teams, or your town is deciding. This is more appropriate. Your town is deciding whether to build a shopping mall or to develop a park. So there's no wrong answer, but why do you think it's a better idea for your town to build a shopping mall instead of a park? So it's just kind of a persuasive answer where you pick a side and you just give your ideas and examples, almost like a short essay on why you think option A is better than option B. So once again, keep in mind of the word count range and you should be fine. Okay, this is just showing you what task A looks like for writing. So this is the writing an email scenario. So it just gives you the scenario that you're going to be writing on, and then what you have to include in the email on the right side. Another helpful feature, it's going to tell you every time you type a word how many total words you've typed. So when you're trying to keep your response within the range, you're going to know every time you type how many words you've already typed. So you won't have to count anything, which is helpful. Okay, the last section is speaking. So speaking has 8 different scenarios or tasks. You're always going to be given preparation time when you can see the question and prepare your answer. So it's usually about 30 to 60 seconds of preparation time where you're going to see the question or the topic that you have to talk about. And this will give you time to either, mentally think of what you're going to say, or if you wanted to write anything down on the note paper. Okay, so just some tips. Use the full amount of time to provide your response. Don't give a very short, basic response. You want to give a full response. Use different vocabulary. Also, you want to talk like with energy, with purpose. You want to sound like you're interested in what you're talking about. So use enthusiasm, intonation, stuff like that. So that covers the basics of the speaking section. I'll just give you an example of what a speaking section question will be. So one of the questions in task number 3, you're going to have to look at a picture on the screen and spend about 60 seconds describing what you see. So with this question, you want to keep in mind that the person you're describing the picture to can't see the picture. So with that said, you want to start with an overview of what you're looking at. Like I'm looking at a classroom full of students. And then after you've given that introduction to the person, then you can start talking about, the student in the blue shirt is doing this. The student in the green shirt is doing that. So that's kind of how you want to frame it. Just use the full amount of time that you're given. So yeah, we have a lot of we have a lot of videos that are free, instructional videos that will help you to prepare for the CELPIP test. So we have ones that focus on specific sections like speaking, like writing. We even break it down even further. So if you're looking to get, for example, a level 9 or higher in speaking, then we have the CELPIP Speaking Pro video Target 9+. Or if you're looking to maybe just get to a level 5, the CELPIP Speaking Pro Target 5. So a lot of helpful free videos. We also have a weekly CELPIP Live. It's almost like a TV show. It's online. And basically we stream it on YouTube. And we have special guests that will complement the CELPIP test. Sometimes we have immigration professionals on there that are giving advice on the current immigration situation. And we also talk about CELPIP tips, English building tips. So it's a very helpful session. It's totally free. I believe it happens Tuesdays and Fridays of every week. So you can check out our website for more information. But, just take advantage of it while everybody's at home during this kind of, difficult and new time. We just have a lot more study tips as well on our YouTube channel and website, so you can check more of that out. And we have online practice tests. Everybody that opens a CELPIP account for free gets a free practice test. The best thing about the practice test, it's the same format as the real test. So it's free too. You might as well take advantage. This will give you a really good idea of how the test is going to look. You also will be able to check your scores in listening and reading for the free practice test. Just going to briefly touch on this. So basically, due to the current situation, we are altering how we test. So if it's, everybody wearing a mask, which is now a requirement, also, sanitizing equipment much more often, making sure that there's distance, more distance now in between test takers. So we do take this very serious, and we're looking to keep our test takers safe once we resume testing again in Ontario. So visit our website if you want more information on, new test centers now opening up, and also other COVID protocol that we're following right now. All right. So now we can get to the questions.
Fantastic. I have a lot of questions for you here. I've been looking at a little bit on the questions that we've had deposited on for us early on, but also a few questions specifically, first of all, about the waiting time. So
Yes.
I know, for example, I taught IELTS at Seneca College for many years, and George Brown as well. And while I was there, I mean, we sometimes did mock tests, and it always was remarkably difficult for the students to sit for 3 hours straight doing the reading, listening, and writing components in a row. And as far as I understand, in a real test, you can't leave, but you can finish early for CELPIP.
Yeah, that's a great question. So how it works is you are able to get up and take washroom breaks, or to take some water. But the key is that the test time will keep running. So if you are planning on taking a break to get up and stretch, or take some water, go to the washroom, just go during a time where you have a lot of time to answer one question. So like the writing section, where you're given 30 minutes to answer one question. Because for the reading and listening sections, the questions come at you more fast-paced, so you don't want to get up and then miss a whole series of questions. But you can get up, but the test timer will keep running. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, fantastic. You just kind of mentioned a little bit, and I have to ask these questions because a few of our attendees asked the question, what about what essay in CELPIP? Is there no essay in a CELPIP? Is it just CAEL?
Yeah, I mean, like even part number 2 of writing. So part number 1 is writing an email. Part number 2 is kind of an essay idea, because you have to pick a side. So side A versus side B, and you have to support. Why do you think it's better your town builds a shopping mall instead of a park? So it is kind of an essay idea where you have your different reasons and then supporting, examples on why you believe A is better than B. But the actual amount of writing is almost the same as the email. So it's not a very long piece of writing.
And you mentioned that you're supposed to choose one side versus another side. Can you have a balanced response and agree to one to some extent, but disagree to another extent, or?
Yeah, I would say, you probably want to pick a side. Maybe Anna can give more detail on this, but one idea, which is similar to what you were saying, is you could also say, well, this is why I think A is better than B, and this is why B is not a good idea. So you're also saying why the other option is not the best idea. But in terms of being kind of in the middle, maybe Anna can.
Yes, I mean, if you're going to respond to a question, the best type of response is to pick a side. But yes, you will still be referring to the other option to say why that option isn't the best option, so it makes your argument stronger. But if you say it depends, then that type of response is not what we're looking for. We really want you to pick one side and use all the information, your supporting ideas, to give reasons as to why that option is a better option.
And just one more question, I believe, unless I have time. I don't want to spend too much time here, but one final question is about the materials for CELPIP preparation. And I'm asking this because you've already briefly mentioned that you'll be able to provide some links to some information, but it seems that a lot of my students at Summerhill Online Academy, which are preparing, are always asking me for supplementary CELPIP materials for their studies. Like we do include our own materials at Summerhill Online Academy, but of course students want to know more, and even if they want to self-study, and a lot of people want to self-study and know a little bit about their own level, where can most people find all those materials? I noticed there are not many in the library in a physical sense.
Yes. So we do have some self-directed online study programs. So actually, as attendees of today's session, we're going to be giving away CELPIP Accelerate Reading and Writing to everybody that's attended today. So that is like an online self-directed study product, and it has all these different resources. Like you can take a sample test in it. It has instructional videos. It has study notes for you to look at. In terms of knowing where you stand in a section, our paid practice tests that you can buy. So you buy them in sets. Each set has 2 practice tests in it. They give you real CELPIP levels for listening and reading. So that's for the paid practice tests. For the speaking and writing, because it has to be marked by real people, we don't give you your score in the practice test, but we'll give you, for example, for this particular question in the practice test, this is a level 7 writing response. So you can click on it and it will show you, and then it will have a level 10 writing response, and you click on that and you can kind of compare what are the differences. And the same for speaking. So for that question, you can hear a recording of a real level 7 response versus a level 10 versus a level 4. So that is in the paid practice test that we offer.
Okay, thank you very much. I have I do need to ask this question specifically with CELPIP before we go to CAEL. You mentioned that the test centers are making some adjustments in terms of response to COVID, including masks and greater social distancing, and specifically, when are registrations for CELPIP open? When can students start registering?
That's a great question. So basically, we do have test dates right now that people can register for. There is a lot of backlog. So we have testing is booked basically in Ontario up to about the 1st or 2nd week of August.
I'm just gonna quickly let you know, because I just checked just in case before we started the presentation. The earliest date right now that you can book for a test is September 4th.
Oh, okay.
So
there you go.
All of August is completely booked, but we are in the hopes of maybe adding extra days. So if you do register or go online, ask for the notifications, the updates, and they'll send you emails if any changes occur.
Okay, this is a follow-up question to the same question. I know I have a lot of questions, but I really want to be specific here and help our attendees out here. And one of our attendees asked, Mr. J. Lee, he said, if a person, and I'm not sure if you would know this or if immigration would be better to answer this question, but if a applicant applies for a CELPIP date, and because of COVID, they were not able to take the CELPIP exam, and their visa expires before applying for the express visa, what exactly happens? Are there any contingency plans that the government has is planning to take into account, provided that the candidates are unable to do the CELPIP before their application for the express visa expires?
So what I would say to that is that we are offering free transfers due to COVID. If anybody has to reschedule their exam, or if the exam doesn't go on as planned, we are giving free transfers of the test date to a different available date. In terms of anything to do with the visas expiring, stuff like that, it's better. We recommend you to call the government directly, just because we don't want to give you guys the wrong information. They would know 100% on these like visa extensions, or you're running out of time due to things being kind of crazy right now. So it's better to contact the government directly for anything to do with visa applications.
Okay. So those are the only questions I have, and the other questions I have here are more about CAEL and basically more general about the other parts of both CELPIP and CAEL. So I'm going to leave them to a little bit later. I'm going to save some for specific for Anna as well, so that she doesn't feel lonely.
Not at all.
Okay.
I don't think I'm feeling lonely at all. That's a great thing. All right, I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it now.
Yes, we can see it. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, just to make sure I have everything here. Okay, fantastic.
So just before you go, Anna, just to be very clear, because some of us are not as familiar with CAEL as we are with CELPIP, and CAEL is for post-secondary education in Canada, right?
Yes, that is correct. It's mainly for post-secondary. If you're thinking about either entering universities here in Canada or colleges, then this would be one of the options that they do accept across Canada. And there are some professional organizations that also do accept CAEL, because sometimes when you're applying for a job, they might ask you for your level of English, or they just want to know how proficient you are depending on the specific job that you are applying for. So this would be very helpful if you do take the CAEL test. And for people who are also taking the immigration consultant program, one of the options that they can do is also take the CAEL test as well as a CELPIP. But usually many people, they opt to take the CAEL test because they have a bigger advantage of doing so. So there are other institutions that would need the CAEL test as well. Right. Okay, so let's begin just to give a little bit of a background information about the CAEL test. So we are obviously working today with Summerhill, which is great. And I know Patrick already touched a little bit upon the different areas where we can take the test. So I'm just going to continue on so we don't have to repeat some of the information. But just like the CELPIP test, it is a fully computerized test. That means that you will be doing the listening, reading, writing, and speaking all on the computer. And over 180 institutions, that's all universities and most colleges, do accept the CAEL test. To receive your test results, once you do the test, you will receive it about 8 business days later, as well as you also have the option when you are registering for the test, you can also choose up to 5 institutions to send it for free. But later on, if you decide once you receive your test results that you would like to send it to certain institutions, then the cost will be $20 each. And then for study materials, we actually have quite a bit now for CAEL. Because it's such a newer test, many people don't seem to find a lot of information, but we do have a lot online and a lot of it is for free. So I will be talking about that a little bit later. In terms of the pricing, the price is exactly the same as the CELPIP test. It's $280 plus tax, so that's roughly $316 with the tax. So just to have a clear idea about that. And what you have here right now is the band descriptors. Now, the way it is done, or the scoring system is done, is a little bit different. I know that for IELTS, it's usually over 9, and they do have a 0.5 system, so you can get a 6.5, 7.5. But for CAEL, it's actually over 90, which is still comparable to IELTS, but their point system is a little different. We don't have the 0.5 in the results, so you can either get a 60, 70, 80, or 90. Now, if you do have, for example, an average of 65, so let's say you have 60 in writing, 60 in speaking, and you have 70 in listening, 70 in reading, the average of all the scores will be 65, but your score will be 70. So it usually does bump your score a little bit higher, so it gives you an advantage sometimes. It really depends. Okay. And then to continue on, so some of the differences here, if we're comparing it to IELTS, is that the type of test is different. Usually, if we're talking about the CAEL test, it is more comparable to TOEFL than it is to IELTS. IELTS, you will have separate listening, separate reading, separate writing, separate speaking. But the way this test is done is more of an integrated test. So there are different skills in each section of the test. The only exception is the first part, which is the speaking. So you will have 4 sections in the speaking here, and they are independent. So this is the independent speaking, which is part 1, and then part 2, the integrated reading, has 2 skills. So you will be doing reading and speaking. And it's always about one topic. So when you do the reading section, you will respond to the questions, and then after you will have a speaking question about the reading. So the reason why this is done is to make it more real or more realistic to what you do in a school. So if you're in a classroom and you're reading a textbook for the first time, you're reading an article, you're reading a journal for the first time, so you're reading the information, then you might respond to some questions that the teacher may have, and then after there will be a class discussion, or maybe you're discussing it in a group or with your partner. So that discussion is what we want to hear from you. So it's made in such a way that it's easier for people to understand, and you don't have to memorize the information because the information will be provided for you, and all you need to do is talk about that. For the next section, the integrated listening, the integrated listening is basically very similar. So you will be hearing a passage. There will actually be two different passages, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you will also have a speaking question about the listening. So it's a different topic, but again, it's made in a way where you're able to comprehend the information and later talk about it. And then the last two parts, which is the academic unit A and academic unit B, there are 3 skills that are involved. So it's still one topic. So unit A will have one topic, for example, deforestation. It'll be about, the reading will be about deforestation, and you respond to some questions. Then the listening will be about deforestation, and again, you respond to some questions. And then you'll have a reading section about the same topic. So it's going to be exactly what you read and what you heard. So again, it makes it easier for people to respond instead of come up with something new that they're not very familiar with the topic, but here we help you. So you already know what the topic is about, you have the information in front of you, you have access to the reading, access to the listening section, because there will be a summary done there for the listening section, and it just makes it a lot easier, the process. And then unit B is very similar. Again, you'll have the reading and the listening section, and then the writing about either the listening or the reading section. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more in the next part. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first part, which is the independent speaking. For independent speaking, that you will have 3 questions, and it's basically about yourself, and we're going to look at some of the questions right after. The integrated speaking, that is going to be in parts 2 and 3. So we will be talking about something you read or something you heard. Now, the question here, it says, what do you want to study at the university and why? That's a fairly simple question. It's about you, it's about university life. So we just want to know what subject or what you're interested in studying, and to give a reasonable explanation as to why you want to study that. And obviously you'll have time to prepare, and then you will give your response, and then you just continue on to the next section. And the other type of question that you may be asked also is, for example, there could be a question like, do you want to live on campus or off campus? So again, it always relates to university college life. And then the last question will always be about a graph or a chart, which is what we can see right now. There will always be something here, some information, and the question will be very similar in all the tests. So it will say, describe and explain the information you see depicted in the graph. What conclusion can you draw? So the main thing here is we just want to make sure that you understand the information that you see. What can you see in general from that information? What is unique from the information? And what conclusions can you draw? So if we're talking about non-resident travelers to Canada, and you're saying, well, most people travel by air and very few people travel by sea, what other information can you tell us from that? Because they give you the population, how many people are traveling. So it's just, the only thing you need to focus is on the graph or on the chart. So you don't need to give us additional information or your personal experience. So it makes it easier for people just to give specific information. And as we continue, this is for the integrated reading. So you will have a question for speaking about the reading. When you get that question, you will always have access to the reading passage. So that just makes it easier to find the information, to focus on that information, and to be able to talk about it. And then the last one will be for the last speaking section will be for the listening. So when you are listening to the questions or listening to the passage and then responding to the questions, that will be only one part. After that, you will have a question for the speaking, and it will be related to the same thing that you heard. But the benefit here is that you will have notes taken where it says lecture notes, as you can see here in red. It says lecture notes. This is what you heard already, and here is the summary. So it actually gives you an opportunity to remember some of the information you may have missed or something specific that you wanted to talk about. That information will be written down for you. So you actually don't need to write anything for the listening section. And that's a great guide for many people. Okay, so we're going to continue on to the next section. Now, in part 2, because you have that speaking that is about the reading, in the reading section, so that's specifically that section there, you're going to have a short reading and a long reading. Now, the short reading is very short. It's only 5 minutes and 30 seconds, but the questions, you only have 3 questions. That's it. So it makes it really simple for people to respond. And then for the long reading, you will have 11 questions and 20 minutes to respond to these questions. So this gives you sort of an idea as to what type of questions you will be asked. For the short reading, it's always something very simple about maybe instructions or homework that you received. But the long reading, that will be about maybe a journal or a text or an article from a university. So that's just to give you an idea. And then this is what it will look like. So side by side, you will always have the passage there. And then on the other side will be the questions. When you're responding to questions, there are always multiple choice questions. When you are responding to that, make sure you do respond to everything. Even if you're not sure about the response, make sure to write something, because it's always best to not keep it blank, because you don't lose any points from that. So if you're able to just pick an answer, if you're not too sure, you can always go back to it. So once you finish responding to the question, you will always have different pages. As you can see here, there's only 2 pages. So page 1 will always have maybe 1, 2, or 3 questions. We will never have more questions in each page. It's maximum 3, minimum 1. So in this case here, page 1 has 2 questions. Page 2 will have only 1 question, because in total, you'll only have 3 questions for the short reading. Once you have responded to the questions, the white box will turn green. So that's just an indication that you have responded. You can go to page 2 and continue with the next questions. If you want to go back to page 1, you can. If you're not sure, you might want to change your response, you can do it freely. But once you're satisfied with your questions and you want to continue, you can press next, the blue button. But please remember, if you do press the blue button, you cannot return. Okay, and now the next part, this is the long reading. So for the long reading, you will have the 11 questions, and there are 5 pages here. So again, for each page, you'll have maximum 3 questions, and just make sure to respond to all the questions. Now for the short listening, it's very similar to the reading. The format will be very similar. The questions will be very similar, because for the short listening, it's only 3 questions. For the long listening, it's 11 questions. Now, one of the benefits here about the short reading is that you have time to preview the questions. So you can go over it, look at it. Because it's only 3 questions, they only give you 30 seconds to preview. But it's enough time to look at it, to understand what the topic is about, and then listen to the passage. So after you've responded to all the questions, at the end you'll have 60 seconds extra to review your response. Now, because the long listening, obviously you have more questions, you have more time to preview, which is 2.5 minutes. And at the end, you have 3 minutes to review everything. And this is what it looks like. So this is a sample of the short listening. And here you can see that the audio is playing. And just be aware that the audio will only play once. So you cannot repeat it, unfortunately. And this is a sample of the long listening. And again, you will always know how much time you have to preview the questions, how much time you have to respond to the questions, and at the end, how much time you have to review the question. So all that information will always be given to you. And the last section. So when you're doing the writing section, the long writing will be about the reading that you just did and the listening that you just heard. So for the long writing, it'll be a maximum or minimum of 250 words. What I recommend in this case, because a lot of people sometimes they tend to give too much information. I've had many students who have written 300, 350 words, but just to remember, it's always best to keep it around the same range. So it's best to do it from 240 to 260, but try not to go over that. Because once you do, then the raters will not be reading the rest of the information because you didn't follow instructions correctly. So just be aware of that. And here you will be given 35 minutes to respond. And this is a short essay question. So we do want to see 3 to 4 paragraphs when you are responding to the question. And again, it's going to be about the listening, about the listening and the reading that you just had. So it's great because it refreshes your memory and you will have access to it. And then I will talk about the short writing. So the short writing is actually quite short. You're only given 10 minutes, but you're writing only 100 words. 100 words is just a very short paragraph. And the idea here is that you are going to give in your own words a summary about the reading or the listening that you just heard. So it's actually one of the easiest sections for many people because all you have to do is more of a comprehension question. So all you have to do in your own words is tell us what you understood about the reading or about the listening. And this is what the long writing looks like. And once you're doing the writing section, you will always have access to the reading passage and the lecture notes, which is the listening passage. So the information will always be there and you can click on both just to get the information. So it makes it easy for you to access and to respond to the questions. And of course, you will have editing tools like cut and paste. You can copy or you can go back. So there are many advantages to that because you're always using that anyway when you're typing. But the only thing we do not have is spell check. So just be sure to always review because naturally we do make typo mistakes. So always review, go back, just make sure that all your information is correct. And then this is a sample of the short writing. And again, you will have access to the reading passage, to the lecture notes, which is the listening. And you have all the other benefits, but this will be shorter because it's only one paragraph that you're responding to. Okay, well, let me just go back there. Are there any questions about this?
There are tons of questions popping out here. I got tons of questions. So
I'm all about questions.
but before we asked, I'm going to make sure I ask everybody's questions that is attended here. Lots of the questions. Some of you guys have tons of questions. I got them here for you. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that for the academic section, there is no spell check. But you can basically write in Microsoft Word and have Microsoft Word correct your spelling and grammar and everything. And you can just copy paste directly into it. And so is Microsoft Word available on those computers that candidates will be using when they're writing their CAEL?
It is not. That was a great question. Because we have our own program for the test, there's actually no Microsoft, there's no Word, there's no Excel, no PowerPoint, so they won't have access to that. So it's a different program, but once the program begins and they start the test, they won't be able to go back or change it.
So there wouldn't be like internet access to Grammarly?
No internet access either. Great questions, by the way, because I know there are some people who want to go back or look for words they don't understand. Unfortunately, there isn't any of that because it's the way the program is done, and there isn't any way to manipulate that program.
You've also mentioned that for immigration and permanent residency purposes, and again, there's express visas, there's different ideas. You have to go on the internet to the or contact the government directly to find out what score is required for CELPIP, depending on your personal plan on how to immigrate to Canada. But that's for post-secondary education, for IELTS, you need 6 for colleges. Most colleges are for IELTS band 6. And you need 6.5 for post-secondary university education. And I just noticed how the bands are like 65 almost. What would be the score for post-secondary education for CAEL?
It really depends. So now, if we're talking about universities, most universities are like UFT, Ryerson, New York, because those are the top 3 universities here in Toronto. Usually the requirement is a 70 over 90. But there are other universities like Western universities, and there are sister universities that are connected to Western University. Then the requirement is a 60. So,
but 70 is reaching the top of the requirements, though. And again, just quoting what you said before, if you get a 65 out of 90, you get bumped up to 70, basically.
You do, but then again, what would be recommended there is to find out specifically, and you can do that easily online, is to find out what the score requirements are. Because there are in some cases, not all, but there are in some cases where they will accept writing and speaking 60, and then listening and reading 70. So it's always best because they'll say minimum requirement of 60 for writing, minimum requirement of 60 for speaking, but the average must be 70. So there will be that information online. So it's always best to check because I don't want to give the wrong information. So it's good for them to find that out. Now, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just going to mention, just for colleges, most colleges, again, the top colleges, if we're talking about like Humber or Centennial or Seneca College, a lot of the top colleges, they will request a 60. But then there are other colleges that will accept 50, even career colleges sometimes will accept 50. So there are certain colleges that do have a lower scoring system.
I have this question on behalf of John DeMello. He's been patiently waiting for a lot of his questions to be answered here, but I have a few questions here. So this is a little bit surprising for me, but John was asking about the unlike IELTS materials. So he seems to be, when he was looking for IELTS materials, they seem to be similar or just repeating themselves. They didn't seem to be as diverse. Do you have, how many tests, like mock tests, are available on the official CELPIP website?
Well, for mock tests, they actually have up to 7 tests, and there's 1 free test that you can get. So in total, there are 8 tests that are available. But the first one, if you just open an account, you can receive 1 free test automatically. The other ones do have a purchase, and from time to time, there could be discounts available. But if you decide to purchase one of the tests, you will have also samples included in that. So you can hear sample responses of people who've taken this test already.
And just a reminder of how many sample tests are available for CELPIP as well. Is that also 7 or more of those?
No, they have more. They have actually about 14 because it is a little bit different. When you're buying a CAEL test, you receive 1 test. But if you buy a CELPIP test, you actually receive 2 tests. So in total, there's 14. And if you want a better discount, we also sell bundles where you can either purchase like from 1 to 4, set 1 to 4, and then there's a bundle for that. So there's reduced prices if you purchase more tests.
Now, Anna, you mentioned before that September 4th is the earliest foreseeable. And again, we are taking it month after month as the situation seems to be developing. And we've just noticed that just Monday, we've learned that we are in emergency in Ontario for another 4 weeks. Yep. But the earliest date where you see foreseeable for CELPIP would be September 4th. What about CAEL?
The same. I actually double checked, believe it or not. Just while we were talking, I was like, click, click, click. What's the dates? I went directly online. It's September 4th. But just please note that I'm only talking about Ontario, Toronto, basically GTA, because there are other locations that could possibly have other dates that are available. Because when you're looking for dates, availability, then you're putting in the actual country, you put in the province, you put in the city, but there could be other possibilities in other cities. So don't quote me on that, because I know with the information that I'm giving to you right now is for Toronto GTA area.
This is regarding accommodation. I have 2 questions for accommodation. First of all, in terms of headphones, are there any covers for the headphone pieces when you are using the headphones there?
There are not, but they're always sanitized before and after. So we make sure that we clean them out completely, because they have this leather, it's like a leather type fabric. So we just make sure to clean everything. So, yeah.
Okay, and another question was about earplugs. Is it possible for candidates to wear earplugs during the exam?
Yes, that is an option that we do offer, and it's just like a little packet that you can use and then throw it out. So though we don't reuse any of the earplugs, so if you feel that you don't want to have disturbances from other people, even though the headphones are quite useful because they do take away a lot of the noise, but if you feel that you want extra added protection and you don't want to hear anything that other people are saying, then yes, you do have that option. You just raise your hand, they'll give it to you.
One last question for accommodation. One of our participants asked about her husband's back issues. So apparently her husband has back issues and he cannot sit down for very long, and he needs to be able to stand up for a couple of minutes and then continue the test standing up and then sit down again. And I mean, do you have any special chairs or accommodation for individuals who have back problems or just are not comfortable sitting in one place for too long?
We do offer special accommodations, but for that, they will need to write to us. So it would have to be at info@celpip.ca, because each individual, whichever case you may have, they have different needs. So some people will need like bigger print, or they need to stand up every 5 minutes, but we do require a doctor's note. But it's always best to contact us, let us know what your situation is, and then from there we can give additional advice.
Yeah, and just don't register. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, don't register for any of the regular sittings, because those would be under regular exam conditions. So best to just email us with your request for special accommodations.
Where did I have this question here? I had a pretty good question. Right. So let's say if you applied in, let's say in some city in Ontario for a post-secondary program, but you realize that particular post-secondary program is not open in that particular city, is it possible to transfer your score from, let's say, Algonquin College to, let's say, George Brown College, or vice versa?
I'll let Patrick respond to this one. He knows more about this than I do.
Yeah, so well, I mean, yeah, so basically how it works with CAEL is when you register for the test, you can choose up to 4 institutions to have your score report sent to for free. If you're, if it kind of comes after you've been tested and, oh, I want to send it to a different place, yeah, you can have a score report sent to a different college that accepts CAEL or university, but you have to pay an additional fee if you're doing it after the fact, so after you've been tested. But before, when you're registering, you can specify up to 4 institutions to have your report sent to for free.
And you can change it. I do believe that if you've made a mistake and you're like, oh, I wanted to actually send it to a different institution, then as long as you're doing this before you receive your test results, then yes, it is possible.
This is a question more for CELPIP, and we're just going to go back and forth. I just want to be exhaustive. There was someone who is applying for an immigration consultant certificate, so international immigration consultant, and he or she has a $50 discount code. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe there's something.
Yes, well, the thing is, when we were in, I think, better times, we were offering a $50 discount for anybody who took the pre-test for CAEL. So if they tried the test, it was for free, and we did have dates available at that time. Unfortunately, now we're not offering it, but those discount codes are usually valid only for 3 months. If the date has already passed, I would recommend them to, again, send us an email. They can send it to info@cael.ca or info@celpip.ca. Just let us know to see if there's anything that we can do to continue giving that discount for that person who already took the pre-test.
This is a uncommon question, but in any case, for those who are looking for postgraduate work permits, and it will expire soon. Again, a very similar question in terms of the situation. A lot of us are handling a pause in the way that both governments and post-secondary institutions are handling some of the visa applications. And again, how to handle the current situations regarding this. And I'm just going to answer that question and just stay posted and keep looking at regular updates from the Canadian government. Also, what I've noticed is a lot of those kinds of questions. The best way to do that is to contact an immigration consultant. And again, there is a lot of immigration consultants that provide free orientations as well, a lot of information as things develop. But again, if you take a look on the official government website and register to either the newsletter or to regular updates, you will actually receive regular updates regarding these kinds of questions. So, and again, we will just have to trust the Canadian government to be doing its best at the moment, as there's very little they can do.
Yes,
so
that's correct.
I think those are all the questions that I have. Thank you so much. So
I'm just gonna quickly share my screen again so that just people know if they are interested in learning a little bit more about CAEL or doing the webinars. Let me see if I can just, can you see it now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, okay. So if anybody is interested, because CAEL is a different type of test and it's different from IELTS, although it is still an English proficiency test, it's an academic test. The best alternative here would be if you want to do a little bit of practice, know a little bit about the tips, the strategies, how to focus a little bit more on these type of tests. We do offer free CAEL webinars, and they're live webinars, and we have these amazing instructors there that give you the best tips possible so you can prepare well for these tests. So if you go to cael.ca/webinars, you can see all the different dates. We have them every week, so you can go ahead, register for them, and usually we have quite a bit of people in these workshops. We've had up to 350 people attend, so they are very popular. So I would highly, highly recommend if anybody wants to know how to prepare for CAEL that they take this, because it's quite helpful. And the free sample test, so once you just open an account, you will receive that, as well as the overview, which is very similar to some of the information we've already presented today, but in a little bit more detail. And these are the tests. It does say 1 to 6, but I do know that they've added another test. So each test is $25, but as I mentioned before, there are bundle packages that you can receive. And if you want to do some additional practice, we have one that's called Practice Test Plus for CAEL. And they have more exercises, more grammar exercises as well, if you want to do a little bit of practice there. And the best of all these products is CAEL Accelerate. So it's very similar to what Patrick already mentioned for CELPIP Accelerate. So they have over 50 instructional videos. They do have a full free test as well that's included. So they analyze that test by sections, and they also have sample responses. So it's fantastic. It's one of the best for classes and in general, just to learn how to prepare for the test. This will be given to anyone that's attending today for free. So we will be sending that to you by email. And I'll just continue here. Okay, I know that Patrick already mentioned this. We'll just continue on. I know there were questions, and here is the contact information just in case they want to contact you, Mache, or us. They can just go directly to info@cael.ca, or for Patrick, info@celpip.ca. So I'm just going to leave that there for a moment. So if anybody wants to get the information or do a screenshot or take a photo of it, that would be one of the best things that you can do. I also had a question for you, Mache. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in your academy, what type of services you offer, so that if students are interested in preparing for these tests, what they can do?
Well, currently under COVID, we provide online classes, and especially, so we have academic communication classes. We've previously had IELTS preparation, and we are now having a lot of CELPIP classes as well. So we have CELPIP and CAEL preparation classes. We have both private classes and group classes for CAEL and for CELPIP. And we also provide monthly free classes. So we have trial classes available. We have trials. We have short trial classes almost every week, and we have monthly master classes, longer classes, which is promotional classes that is specifically focused on one particular skill set. And we like to complement some of the webinars that you have available in Paragon, but we focus more on skill-based, such as grammar-based, punctuation improvement, collocations, tone, especially tone for speaking. We know that proper tone is so important in professional settings, both for the academic version of CAEL and for CELPIP as well. So
I feel like I need to take your class right now. If my tone is correct.
you are always, both of you guys are always welcome to join any of our classes. And again, some of our master classes, specifically skill-based classes, are free. And we will be sending tomorrow an email to all attendees, some promotional materials regarding our upcoming free classes, and also some trial classes for some of our courses.
Oh, that's great. It really complements what we do with you, because if it's more skills based, CAEL is perfect, because that's the type of test it is.
Right. Okay, so
any other questions from the audience?
So the audience, last chance here for questions, and we've had plenty. So unless I can see any final burning questions,
they do have our contact, and we will be sending an email with the contact information as well. So if there are any further comments or questions, we'll be happy
And just a reminder that when you do get an email back from Paragon Testing Enterprises, registering for CELPIP is free. There's a free registration, and you receive free materials as soon as you register, which is one. So you don't have to take a test. You don't have to purchase anything. You can just register for the official CELPIP account, and you'll be able to gain access to a free mock test, which is of course great. I will also be sending a separate email from Summerhill Online Academy. And thank you very much to everyone who's attended and registered. And thank you very much, Patrick and Anna, for being my guests today.
As always, you're a great host.
Always a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, guys.
We'll need to do another one later.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take care. Be safe.
Study.